Hey friends, welcome back to Chat with Nat, Conversations That Count. This is where we talk real life, real money, and real strategies to build wealth without worry, even when life feels completely out of control. Today's episode is brought to you by Caretaking Confidence Productions. Julie and Dan Collins are an incredible team who help podcasters like myself to show up with clarity, confidence, and consistency. If you're someone who's ever felt a nudge to use your voice to share your story or to start a podcast, I want you to visit their website at casetayconfidence.website and see what's possible. Now, this week's episode is the first in a series of 5. Last week, I released an introductory episode as to what this series is going to be about, which is caretaking and how it impacts all 5 F's within our lives: faith, family, finance, fitness, and fun. And so in episode 1, we're talking about faith. Y'all, for 6 days in December, my world shrank. It wasn't about meetings, goals, or plans for the end of the year. It was about hospital hallways, beeping machines, quiet rooms, and whispered prayers I didn't even know how to say out loud at times. I didn't need faith to move mountains. I needed faith to get me from 1 hour to the next, especially in the first 48 hours we were there. If you're listening to this episode and you're thinking, that's exactly where I am right now, then this episode is for you. But before we jump in, I want to share a money tip with you. Faith and finances are actually not opposites. They're reinforcements. You know, a lot of people separate faith and money, but in crisis, these two things collide. Studies show that people experiencing high financial stress are 2 to 3 times more likely to suffer from anxiety and depression. They're more prone to poor decision-making under pressure, and they're more likely to delay medical, legal, and care-related decisions. Meanwhile, individuals who have financial clarity and margin, they report lower cortisol levels, better sleep, higher confidence in crisis situations and making decisions. Here's the truth. Faith helps you to surrender what you cannot control. Financial preparation helps you steward what you can. And the combination of faith plus planning creates peace when everything else feels uncertain. All right, let's jump into today's episode. This series is a solo series where I'm going to be sharing some of what I experienced in December and the few weeks prior to that, as my mom took a significant decline with her dementia, and we ended up in the hospital for 6 days, adjusted a lot of medications, dealt with combativeness, both verbally and physically, and trying to figure out what was next. And so this episode is focusing on leaning on faith during this time for me and what that can possibly look like for you when you're faced with this kind of situation. So for me, what did faith look like when answers didn't come? Well, it didn't look like clarity. It didn't look like certainty, and it didn't look like calm confidence. It looked like a hot freaking mess, y'all. It looked like showing up when I was exhausted, praying without knowing what outcome I was asking for, sitting in silence instead of demanding answers. Research on spiritual coping shows that faith-based resilience is most powerful, not when outcomes are positive, but when uncertainty is prolonged. Faith is not always loud. Sometimes it's simply staying present. And let me talk a little bit about this in that week. So it was the week prior to the week of Christmas. So whatever days those were, Monday through Saturday that my mom was in the hospital. And we were really led to go to the hospital because she had been taking a significant behavioral and emotional decline since the week before Thanksgiving. And we had fears that she had a significant infection, a bladder infection, something like that. And we had tried twice to get a sample to run testing at the doctor's office and weren't able to do so. And her emotional and physical combativeness that Monday morning had me in a position where I couldn't get her to cooperate with me, to put her in the car and take her to the emergency room. I had to actually call for transport, and they had to sedate my mom to get her moved over there. And the first thing they did, of course, take a urinalysis to see if we have an infection. And lo and behold, we don't, which blew us all away. We thought for sure that she did. And our concern was that she could turn septic if it had been going on since before Thanksgiving. But that was not what we were playing with. Those were not the cards we were dealt this time. And so it quickly became evident that my mom was taking a significant and quick decline with her vascular dementia. And so they began the adjustment of medications, and we had psych consults, and we had doctors coming in, nurses coming in. My mom had had a rough night sleeping the night before. And so we were all up by about 5 a.m, and we'd been up once or twice during the night as well. We were tired already. And for me, desperately clinging to my faith came at about 3:00 Tuesday morning. I had been up for almost 24 hours straight, and so had my mom. Now, I had had my son take my dad home around 9 p.m., and I was planning on staying. Well, there were a few factors. The hospital was so busy that we couldn't get admitted to a room on the first day. Once they decided to admit her for observation, work with us on adjusting meds and getting her stabilized again. And this meant 2 just regular chairs in an emergency room, not a recliner, not anything like that. Me with a pillow and a blanket, the bright lights and noise of the hallway in the emergency room, not allowing any of us to calm down to sleep, or I should say any of us, me or my mom. And my mom increasingly confused and acting out. It seemed like the more medications they gave her to try and help, it was having the opposite effect. And that could be for a million reasons. It wasn't the right medicine. It wasn't the right dosage. It was the trauma of the whole day, the noise, the confusion about where she was. My mom had pulled out her IV once. Blood was everywhere. We got it back in on the other arm. She almost got it out a second time. And so at about 2:30 in the morning, I had requested soft restraints for my mom. Y'all, this is not something I wish on anybody. And I touched on it a little bit in the introductory episode last week. But I was standing over my mom because even though they put the soft restraints on her, which are just like mittens on your hands, so I don't want it to sound too crazy, but she was trying to bite them off. And she was determined. And y'all, my mom may be 81 years old and have advanced vascular dementia, but this woman is strong. And she is determined. She is stubborn. And so I was having to hold her hands down as I'm trying to talk to her calmly and get her to calm down, explaining that she needed these on her hands to help her. She was also consistently trying to get out of the bed, and my mom is not incredibly stable on her feet. So there were a lot of safety concerns involved in asking for the restraints. So at 3:00 in the morning, I find myself over my mom, looking her in the eyes as she's begging me to take these off. And her eyes are filled with tears, and I'm sobbing. I have tears running down my face, and the only thing I know to do is pray. Pray over my mom, pray over myself, pray that things can calm down, pray that there is some kind of rest in the future for all of us, and some kind of relief in the moment. And shortly thereafter, I pressed the nurse's button and I said, "Can you please come relieve me? I need a moment." And I stepped out of the room, ended up being able to have a conversation with my niece, who is a nurse in Utah. She was on duty that night. We had been texting back and forth. And so she talked me through a lot of my emotions. She helped me understand the process we were going through, the reason behind everything that was happening. And she was the first one to remind me to continue advocating for my mom. That week we were in the hospital, and I am very stubborn myself. And so I had been using my voice, but she continued to encourage me to do that, and gave me resources and information to think about, questions to ask, things like that, if necessary. And so anyway, when I stepped back into the room to relieve the nurse again, a young man walked in, in his early 20s, and he is a hospital sitter. If you don't know that those exist, which I did not until this moment, they do. And this young man came in, took over keeping an eye on my mom, confidently told me that she would be okay in his hands and to go somewhere and get some sleep. And in the moment, it was hard for me to leave the hospital, and yet I knew it needed to. And now I can look back and realize that was the answer to that prayer I was praying over my mom, that there would be some relief in the immediate future and that we could get answers overall to what was happening and what we needed to do going forward. But my faith in that moment was literally all I had to cling to. And I'm so, so grateful that I have it. Caretaking is, it will test your faith. It will test your resilience. It will test your mindset. It will test your physical strength. It will test you in every way possible. Without my faith, I don't think I could do it. And that is why this series was so important for me to do, coming out of that hospital visit and the adjustment back to home that we've been going through since the Saturday prior to Christmas. But I want you guys to think there is a difference between faith and toxic positivity. I think sometimes those two things can get ensnared or tangled up, the way people talk about things. And this is especially important for caretakers. Toxic positivity is when you're telling yourself, oh, everything happens for a reason. Just stay positive. It's all going to work out. Because there are moments you absolutely don't know that is the case. And so you're poisoning yourself by telling yourself these things in those moments when you're literally shattering from the inside out and trying to convince yourself it's all going to be okay. Just stay positive. That's what I was doing that Monday evening into early Tuesday morning in the emergency room, telling myself somehow it's going to calm down, until the point that I could no longer do anything but lean into my faith and pray. And faith in these moments tell us, yeah, this is hard. And God is with me. I don't understand, but I'm not abandoned. And I can both grieve and still trust through this process. Psychologists note that an emotional suppression forcing positivity can actually increase stress and burnout, especially in long-term caregiving. Faith gives you permission to be honest, not fake. And y'all, I have not always leaned on this in my caretaking journey. I am stubborn. I am independent. I am determined. And so from the time that the doctor told us, my brother, myself, my dad, and my mom, at a visit back in May of 2021, that my parents could no longer live on their own, your girl went into business mode. And I know there are some of you listening that understand what that means. And it's time to get things done. Let's go. I flew back and forth to Salt Lake City every 3 weeks through the summer. We moved my parents into my brother and sister-in-law's house for that time frame as we prepared their house to put on the market and sell. We planned an estate sale, all of the things. Looking for new doctors, working with my cousin who's a realtor out there to make sure the house was ready to go on the market, all of the things. And so I was in business mode. And when I was home here in Texas, I was building my business and doing what I needed to financially take care of my responsibilities, right? So here I am going back and forth 100% in business mode. And I have the ability to separate emotion and focus on just what needs to get done. And so this is where I was at. And it was the day we were packing up our parents' house. And I opened a drawer in my mom's bedroom to pack it up. And it happened to be the drawer that kept all of the jewelry she had made over, I don't even know, a 5 or 10 year period of time leading into retirement. And so shortly after she retired. So it'd probably been at least 10, maybe 15 years since she'd really done beading and jewelry work, but she had made all this jewelry and she kept it in one drawer, organized all there together. And as I started to pull these pieces specifically out, now mind you, we had packed baby pictures, family pictures, mementos, things I had seen in my parents' house my entire life. But for some reason, when I was packing this drawer, my boyfriend Chris walks into the room and asks me a completely unrelated and very simple question. And I immediately doubled over the box in front of me, sobbing, because I couldn't hold back the emotion anymore. And why do I tell this story? Because I was trying to fake and force my way through. I was trying to be strong. I was trying to keep the emotions at bay. As a matter of fact, not even trying to keep them at bay, I literally had shut them off. And it is not a strength to have the ability to do that. The best thing you can do is sit in the emotion and surround yourself with people that can hold you up, especially through your faith. I sat with God a lot of times through this process, a lot of times through a lot of processes the last 7+ years of my life, but my whole life, but really as an individual with my relationship with him the last 7 or so years. And during this time, I was not sitting in the moment. I was just getting things done. And that meant that the emotion was piling up, building up, and it was a dam ready to break. Now, I'll be honest, I gave it a good 5 or 10 minutes of sobbing, everybody staring at me, not knowing what to say or do or what had happened. And then I turned it off and I got back to work. Now, my parents moved here, and I would say that first year they were here, we had a good routine. Things were flowing. My mom was still really easy to get out of the house. She wanted to go do things. And then year 2 hit, and we started to see a slow decline in her physical ability, yes, but also her just desire to get out of the house and go do things. She was kind of in a stage of not wanting to be around people she didn't know. And she wouldn't go almost anywhere unless I was with her and my dad, or all of us were going together. But I was a component that needed to be involved. And so my schedule didn't always allow for that. And at this time, I've done an episode before of how I let my own health and filling my own cup sit on the back burner. I mean, I don't even know that I was on the burner, to be honest with you, but whatever. And so I was struggling with that and just trying to navigate, thinking somehow something would change. And it didn't. Until one day I woke up and realized if I don't do something for myself, I can do nothing for anybody else. And so this last year, I've been on a health journey that has been a game changer for me. And this last few months has forced me into places with my mom's dementia to see myself locking up and trying to control it all with something that is not controllable. And so from the week before Thanksgiving, I mean, there were definitely some tears shed, I don't know how we're going to navigate this. I don't know what we're going to do. And we had started adjusting medications through with her PCP between Thanksgiving and New Year's, or Thanksgiving and Christmas for sure. And, when you try to bottle that stuff up, eventually it's got to come out. Again, just a dam waiting to break. And if there's one thing I have done this last year, it's really leaned into my faith as well. And I think because of that, I just realized I have to feel all of this. It's okay to cry. It's okay to talk to people. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to let people walk through those doors. For 3.5 years, I've had people asking how I'm doing, what they can do to support me, how they can help. And I'm like, we're good. We're good. We're good. No, we weren't good. And I didn't always even know I wasn't good. So please do not take this and think, yep, that's me, and beat yourself up. It's not that. You're going through the motions and you often don't even realize what's happening until it all blows up. And so for me, here I was at this point that all I could do was lean on God when the outcomes were out of my control during that few days. I will tell you, caretaking 100% strips away the illusion of control very, very quickly. especially if it's an advanced diagnosis. And there are significant changes happening really fast. Your ability to go and do whenever you want is gone or has to be adjusted. Your ability to travel is now adjusted. Your emotional capacity is less than it used to be, or that bucket just fills up and overflows so quickly because you can't control diagnoses. You can't control timelines and you can't control outcomes. And for somebody like me, who very much takes after my mom back in the day, that's a struggle. It's a hard thing to do. And so faith becomes the place where you release responsibility for results while still showing up with love and integrity. Spiritually grounded individuals report higher peace levels even when outcomes don't change, because faith reframes responsibility. Your job is to be faithful. God's job is the outcome. And that is something, y'all, that I am still learning on a daily, weekly, maybe even hourly basis some days. I don't have to hold it all together. And God bless the people in my life that week we were in the hospital that stepped up and sent meals to the hospital for my dad and I. A sweet friend that brought a bag of goodies, including chip clips, to me at home one day that I came home just to step out of the hospital for an hour and take care of something for a client. She stopped by and gave me these snacks to take to the hospital. To my boyfriend holding down the fort, my brother on 2, 3, 4 phone calls a day, supporting me the best he could from 1,200 miles away. My niece continuing to check in on me and my mom and what was happening. Thank goodness for all those people. And I think for the first time, I had realized I needed to let some people in. I needed to let some of that emotion surface, I think, over the last year. But I think for the first time, I just realized it's okay to completely tear the walls down. This isn't pretty. It's not supposed to be pretty. Stop pretending like you have it all together because, girl, you don't. And because I let that go, because I sat in tears and because I had hard conversations, it gave me an opportunity. And because also while I was at the hospital 12 to 14 hours a day, I was not hands-on constantly caring for my mom. I could sit back and observe. It gave me so much time to think. And we went from having conversations of your mom should go into a home that's safer for her and safer for you and your dad. Oh, you don't want to do that? Then, you know, you should look at hiring caretakers to come into the home. And let me tell y'all, I am a financial professional. I tell people all the time, you're looking at $60,000 to $80,000 a year for a care facility, a private room care facility. In some states and some situations, depending on the type of facility you want, that could be $100,000 to $150,000 a year for a loved one. I thought sitting down to look at caretaking support, hiring caretakers in the home was a less expensive opportunity. And let me say this, it can be. But I sat down with a service to look at that option, and I went from discussing $5,800 to $9,000 a year for a nursing home, a full-time facility situation from my mom, to 24 hours later finding out that just for 16 hours a day ongoing care, it was going to be $5,100 a week. Now, I was working through a service, so there's additional costs for that. There are more affordable ways to do it. But again, this is my first time going through this process. So I'm using the resources that the amazing professionals at the hospital. I am not trying to throw anybody under the bus. And those caretaking companies provide us such a valuable service. So I am not trying to blow anybody up here. I'm just sharing my experience. And so I was working through these resources and I'm like, are you kidding me? $20,000 a month to have you come in my home? And I had to step back. I stepped back from the nursing home conversation. And that was when my brother said, Natalie, are you ready to give up? You know mom better than anyone, and you know yourself better than anyone. Do you think you can still do this at home? And that's where I decided, yeah, I can. And I'm going to figure it out no matter what it takes. We're taking mom home. So then we get into, the caretaking costs. I heard all the information. I said, I need to have some conversations with my dad and my brother. I had those conversations. And at that time, again, I lean on my faith and I just pray, Lord, help me move in the direction that is best for my mom and help me know what that is. I need to hear your voice really loud right now. And so I called my brother to go through all the information and tell him the cost. And my brother yells, hell freaking no. Now, I don't necessarily think those words are words God would have used, but it was a very loud response that again woke me up. And as we continued the conversation, and so again, I feel like now my brother was more animated through this whole conversation, not towards me, but towards the situation and why would we need this? And what it did, though, it was an absolute answer to that prayer of let me hear you. Because again, through that conversation, my brother's like, look, if you can get care through them, can't you go to somebody directly? And you haven't even gotten home yet to see what it looks like and see where you need support or if you even need support. If mom adjusts to the meds, maybe we don't for a while. And that is not my brother trying to convince me not to get support and help that we actually do need. That's him just asking all the questions alongside me. And what it did was, it was my brother's way, whether he knows it or not, of doing the same thing his daughter had done, telling me to advocate for my mom, to advocate for me, to advocate for our family and what we felt was right for mom, regardless of anybody else's opinions. And I have an amazing friend, Jessica, who I hope to have as a guest on this podcast before too long. She's been a caretaker for her mom for 11 years, a solo caretaker. And her mom has Alzheimer's. She's in the late stages. And I've followed her thanks to a friend telling me about her for a couple of years. And man, the growth I've had because of information she shares and how openly she's willing to talk about her and her mom's journey. And I'm so absolutely grateful for her and her platform. And I reached out to her and we had a call that Friday. My mom was in the hospital and she gave me so many resources. She poured belief into me. She reminded me who I was and what I'm capable enough and how to ask the questions of others and myself through this process to know what support I need and my mom needs. And so, Jessica, if you're listening to this, I'm incredibly, incredibly grateful for you, for the example you've set, for the information you share, for your time and caring about my journey as a caretaker amidst being on a journey of your own. And anyway, that conversation was like the bow on that week. It was a hard week. It was an overwhelming week. It was a faith testing, a faith leaning, and a faith affirming week for me on this caretaking journey. And I found my voice at another level and we brought my mom home. And so far, we're doing great. We're doing good. Great is redefined in this situation, honestly, because I want to compare it to what great would have been before. I guess in this situation with what we're dealing with, we're doing great. Mom has settled into her medications. Timing is very important when it comes to that. And we're not at a point where these medications are getting us back to where she was before. We're managing where she is now. She's getting quieter. She's getting less interactive. She's getting less physically active, but she's here and we're able to take care of her. And the faith testing and the faith proving that I experienced in that week just has me so, so grateful that I was pushed to a point where I had to lean on that because I didn't have anything else to remind me. I can lean on that every hour, every day, every week, every minute if I need to going forward. And I needed that reminder. And so I feel like somehow in the mess of that week was a blessing to force me to slow down, to reevaluate, to reset, recalibrate, and then start moving back forward. Y'all, faith as endurance, not certainty, is so important. It helps keep you going, not because you know the end result, but because you know there's something there lifting you. That when you can't do it, you can't carry it, he can. And whatever you believe in, your faith can get you through. For me, it is God, without a doubt. God, my Savior, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit. Faith is not knowing how the story ends. I still don't know. I know that this chapter of the story ended with us bringing mom home, and we're managing really well on our own still. But I don't know how the entire story ends. I mean, honestly, I guess kind of I actually do. I don't know when it ends, and I don't know what it looks like between now and when it ends. But faith gives me the strength to be able to say, I can keep going anyway. I can trust even when I'm tired. I will absolutely stay rooted when the ground feels unstable. And endurance based faith is linked to greater emotional stamina. Oh my gosh, the balance, the mental clarity, the way I look at this whole situation is 10 levels higher than it was before this situation. I think in ways we just were drowning in the not knowing what was going on. But I learned so many more things to look for and so many other questions to ask. So as we face future declines, they aren't as traumatic as this one. And sometimes that's how lessons are learned. That's how faith is built. That's how trust is created. So it can create greater emotional stamina. It can reduce caregiver burnout. I 100% walked out of the hospital with everybody having a job. Mine is to caretake. My brother's is to support me from 1,200 miles away. And while he will beat himself up saying he's barely towing his end of the line, he's towing it really well. He shows up for me. He listens to me. And that is one of the most important things somebody could do for me right now. And to have it be my brother who understands my parents, who understands what's going on, means the world to me. But I assigned my dad to just be my mom's husband. And I asked my boyfriend to step in the role of being my dad's buddy and helping him navigate when I'm dealing with difficult situations with my mom. And so I've clarified roles in this process, which reduces me feeling like I'm carrying the weight of everything. And it also improves long-term mental health. Faith is not a feeling. It's a decision that you make and renew every single day. And I could not continue on this journey without mine. And that is something that I learned and I had confirmed without a doubt during that week, that 6 days in the hospital, is that I have to renew my faith daily. I have to choose faith daily, and I have to lean on it in every area of my life, and especially as a caregiver. I want to challenge you guys to pray for strength instead of solutions. There are so many people that say, oh, I offer prayers. I offer prayers when something is bad, something's horrible's happened or whatever. And people want to tear it apart because it's like, if faith existed, if prayers got answered, this thing wouldn't have happened. And I don't believe that's true. Because faith and prayer don't guarantee an outcome. What they guarantee is the strength to navigate whatever that outcome is. And that's a shift that I've experienced significantly in this situation, in this part of life for me most recently. And so instead of praying for things to change, to be fixed, or to become easier, I am praying for strength just for today and one day at a time. I am praying for the wisdom to make the next best decision each and every day in caring for my mom. And I am praying that God will keep me soft and not harden. I've always had a way of navigating and communicating through this dementia journey with my mom But I can tell you, I have softened in the last 2 or 3 weeks with this experience. Somehow I have a patience and a calm to my voice that is greater than ever before. It's not like, I was mean or anything. I managed. And now I just lean in. And I've been given the strength to navigate through it for my mom in a way that keeps her calm, which in the long run works for everybody and creates calm in this home. Studies on prayer and coping show that process-focused prayer, strength, wisdom, peace lead to better emotional regulation than outcome-focused prayer alone. Sometimes faith isn't going to change the situation. It changes you inside of the situation. And I feel like that's what it has done for me. If your faith feels shaky right now, you're not failing. You're human. Feel free to reach out. I would love to pray for you. I would love to be a resource for you. And the other thing I'm going to recommend is that you build systems, spiritual, emotional, financial systems that can support peace instead of adding pressure. You were never meant to carry this alone. And if you, like me, thinks you've got to do it all, please stop. Put the weight down and look around you. There are family members, friends who probably have been asking how they can support you. Let them. There are communities, there are programs available to support you and your loved one. Lean into that. Find out what they are, where they are, and how you can utilize them. Again, you were not meant to carry this alone. And as I wind down episode 1, Faith in Caretaking, I want to share this week's hot take, which is faith is confidence. It's obedience in exhaustion. Sometimes trusting God doesn't look strong. It looks like admitting that you're overwhelmed. It looks like asking for help. It looks like releasing control when you were never meant to hold on to it. Faith is not about having all the answers. It's about staying anchored when you don't. If today's episode lit a fire in you, I'm going to ask you to please share it with somebody who's carrying quiet responsibility, who's leading through uncertainty, or holding it together for everyone else's sake. And as always, please message me on LinkedIn or Instagram. Send me a message through the link in the show notes and tell me your biggest takeaway from this week's episode. Let's keep building wealth, wisdom, and wins together. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Chat with Nat, Conversations That Count. And until next time, protect your peace, protect your people, and protect your wealth.